Hello guys, I'm Super Ron. Welcome back to the channel, and we are back at Auto Shack, and a lot of you have noticed this black Caddy in the background and asked what is going on with it. Well, today is the day we're making a start and we are dropping this on air ride. So on the surface, this looks like a pretty normal black lowered Caddy, but when you actually start looking around it, there are some very unique features that I'll go through in a minute. Originally, it only came in for a service, but after what he saw I did on the white Caddy, he was converted to wanting this to be sitting on the floor. A problem we face though, which I mentioned in the white Caddy video, we get all our air ride stuff from Only Charge Dub. Unfortunately, they have disappeared off the face of the earth. For whatever reason, they have gone out of business and are no longer reachable, which meant we lost our source of air ride products. So I've done a little bit of Googling and I found out we actually had a supplier much more nearby, aptly named Air Ride. So I got in contact with them and they actually do the full TECHNIX kit like we fitted on the white Caddy. They stock all airlift performance stuff, Mk1 stuff, Mk2 stuff, transporter conversions. It really does look like they provide kits for everything. So we placed an order and it has just turned up so we can make a start on our Caddy. And the best thing about these Caddies, of course, they can transport all their own bits. So we've got the full TECHNIX 4-link suspension, front airbags, airlift performance management. So let's unbox it and have a look. So like I said, on the face of it, it looks like a pretty standard lowered Caddy, but there are quite some differences on this. In the back, it has got a full wooden install. It's been boxed in, ply lined, the whole thing. If we go down to the back, it's got the exhaust tip coming out of the rear valance, which is quite a cool mod. It's got the fog light there, it's got some clear rear light. And if I rewind back, we actually had the white Caddy in and had the two side by side. It seems like sometimes you go for years without seeing a Mk1 Caddy, and then they all turn up at once. So after seeing all our work on our Mk1 Caddy, this owner wanted some work too. Very, very cool looking cars. So it's had a pop-out sunroof conversion on the top, and inside, the mods might go unnoticed, but this is actually a full Mark II interior. So it's got a Mark II C1 dash. It's got some different seats put in. I'm not sure what these are out of, but they look much more comfy than the normal Mark 1s. It's got a full center console, like something like a Porsche or something, with cup holders. And then it's had the handbrake relocated here, right at the front. And there's some more Mark II-ness hiding under the bonnet because it has got a Mark II GTI 16-valve KR engine. But it's got rid of all the K-Jet mechanical fuel injection, and it's now on bike carb. So this is what it originally came in for, just to have the carb set up. We're going to do a service on it, get the carb set up, maybe get it on the rolling road, and then go from there. But after too much temptation of seeing what we did to the white one, he now wants to go air ride, get it sitting on the floor. So we'll be doing chassis notches. We've got the TECHNIX rear system to go on as well. So let's get stuck in. So let's unbox all our bits from air ride and see how they've done. This one is our compressor. So we've got a V-Air, just the normal one like we got for all our conversions. Comes with its fitting kit. This one, airlift performance. So we've got the 3P kit, and they've even included own brand sealant, so that'll be handy. Ah, they are in it with the branding. This is the 3P controller with their own plaque on. Very interesting. We've got our controller that will go in the cab, so we'll probably 3D print a mount for that again, just like we did with the white one, and that can sit in the center console. In here we have some fitting kit and handy pipe chopper. Here's the airlift performance instructions, and they've got a little sticker on. Ignore the instructions and fit the pressure relief valve directly to the tank, which is what we do anyway. So there must be a section in the instructions somewhere that says not to. And in the bottom here is usually our loom. Yeah, there is our loom, relay and pipework, along with all the fittings we need and our water trap. So it's all in 1/4 inch line, which is what we used for the last one. And then this one should be our tank. So again, it's an airlift performance tank. Nice little unit, got the drain on the bottom, and they've branded all that as well. So I'm not sure where we're going to put this yet, whether it'll go in the middle or hidden away. But I like the fact it's got the mounts on the bottom, but all the pipes are on the back, so we should be able to hide them nicely. And then that's got the water drain with the shrouder valve to go in the bottom. Very nice like that. So let's have a look at the TECHNIX bits. Here we have front struts. They're in it with the merch. We got keychains, stickers, pens, all the usual, and even got a lighter. That's a new one. Let's see what else we got. That was a lot of packaging, but now we have all our hardware to convert the rear leaf springs to 4-link. So it looks a little bit confusing at the moment, but eventually it will look just like this. It will make a lot more sense when it's all together, but generally the front will just be Mk1. The rear is where it gets interesting. And with the couple of problems that we found with the fitting together onto the rear beam in the other one, this one should be a lot more straightforward. Couldn't resist setting it all out while we're here for a super cool thumbnail. That is what is going to be going in the car. So let's get all this box back up and get this on the ramp. So you saw the exhaust at the back coming out of the rear valance. Does look pretty cool, but underneath it leaves a little to be desired. So it's going to be going off to Jack at Motion Fabrication for a full exhaust system. But just before it goes, I'm going to show you what is underneath. The other thing I'll do actually is get a baseline ride height where we're at the moment. So floor to arch is about 51.5 and about 51 on the rear. So that will give us a starting point. But we are going to be able to tuck these so much better than the white one because it had the wheel spacers on. For the Porsche wheels, the wheels stuck out, whereas these ones are already tucked. So we are going to get it right up in there. The fronts stick out a bit. I think they will still tuck, but it's actually running. Looks like 15mm spacers in there. So if we take them off, that'll go to the floor. So this could be the lowest one we've done yet. So let's get it up in the air. From the outside, doesn't look too bad, but as you go in, it gets worse and worse. I don't think I've ever seen a bend like that before. Got a crease in it and another crease to wiggle it down. We've got some exhaust hangers that are just about hanging. We've got another cherry bomb and then another flexi. So I'm not sure why there's a flexi at the back. Then it runs down as a straight pipe. We've got a couple of bits of stainless, plus a couple of almost hanging hangers. MIG welded stainless. This bit's alright, just a straight pipe going through. And we've got another flexi, another join, and then I'm not even sure what this is, but we're kind of glued together at this point. So it's going to go for a full stainless exhaust from the front, back. I think we'll keep the 4-branch manifold up there, join from there all the way back as a nice new stainless system, and get rid of all this creation. And now up in the air, although our tailpipe looks the same, check out the exhaust system that Jack has made for us. All perfectly bent and TIG welded, all along the factory hangers. Got a nice little box here so it's not too droney. Every weld is just perfect, goes all the way along. Got a nice little kink around the selector box, all serviceable with clamps, and up to the factory tailpipe. So he's modified that a little bit so that seals. But you can see what a masterpiece he has created. All mirror finished. Going out to a sleek little exit. So now let's look at our suspension. So as you can see, it's got the leaf springs on the back. It's had lowering blocks put in and an axle flip. So it's already super low, but all that is going to be going for our TECHNIX conversion. Like we saw in the other one, they bolt on here and the 4-link arms go back to the original arm. We've got new shocks to go on. So we'll get all that stripped off. At the front, we'll be removing the coilovers and putting the airbags in. And what this means is we're going to have to do a chassis notch. So as you can see there on the drive shaft, it has been rubbing on the chassis leg just on normal driving. So if we try and lower it more, that is just going to sit on the drive shaft and not go any lower. So as you've seen us do before, we'll put a big chassis notch in there. And as we're going super low, we're going to be chassis notching this side, just a little one on there. So that's what I'm going to do first. I'm going to get the air shocks on the front so we know our travel, and then cut this notch out. What I think we're also probably going to do in here is flip the track rods and get the ball joint extenders, because they made a massive difference on the other Caddy to how it drove. It just means when it's up in the air, all the steering geometry stays the same. Because like we saw on the other one, when we're lowered a lot and this arm is up here, this steering arm tends to come right up, and then it's working in an arc, not in a flat like this. The same with the bottom arm. So we'll get those bits ordered up and that'll be part of the full package. So that is coilovers off, and if we compare them to our air struts, you can see they are very similar in construction. We've got the same mounting points to the hub down the bottom. We've got the slot for the eccentric camber adjustment, just the same as the standard ones. We've got the brackets for the brake hose at the bottom, and the same two mounts to mount to the body on the top mount. These aren't spherical bearings like you see in some. They are just straight roller bearings, but that will do the job. There's not live adjustment, but you can pick which point you want your camber in. We'll probably stay at the middle because we have got the camber adjustment on here. Some of the other ones have slots in there so you can live adjust it on the car, but we'll start in the middle. And these aren't adjustable height either. So hopefully they've manufactured these to sit at a nice height. If there is a problem, we can add spaces in here just for the initial ride height, and then we can drop to that on the air. It's just a standard shock in the middle with a nut on, and for that we've got our specialist tool that we've used before, a socket that goes through, then that's got the Allen key in the middle, which just allows us to do up the center and the nut at the same time. So we'll get these together. I'm not going to need to assemble this side to see where it hits because we've already got marks there. So what I'm going to do is get our pipe and we'll cut around there. So that'll be our center point. You can see where it's been hitting before. On the other side, I am just going to assemble the strut, jack it right up, and then we can see where the drive shaft is going to hit. This side is going to need a much smaller little chassis notch, but still needs to be done all the same so it's not resting on the drive shaft, and that'll allow us to go extra low. So let's get this side assembled and jack it up with no lines on, and that'll tell us our ride height. So there's the new strut on. We've got our jack underneath, so with no airline in we can pump this up and that'll go all the way until it hits the chassis leg so we can mark where we need to cut. Well, with these struts we are bottomed out, and that is as low as we can go. So I'll just mark and put a little scallop because it will, with the full weight of the car, that will go down a little bit. But I don't think these are ultra low struts. Let's just measure our hub to arch height. 26, I'd say. So at the minute, this is sitting higher than what it was on the coilovers. Less than ideal. But that will go a bit more with the full body and the wheel and everything on. Just I think because these struts aren't adjustable, we're not going to be able to get it as low as we hoped. On this side, we know it is definitely going to be hitting, and what we use for our chassis notches is a bit of 3-inch tube, 3mm thick wall, so it's all nice and thick. We put that on, draw around it, and we know our centre of the drive shaft is in the centre of there. So our drive shaft can go through, it'll go all the way up, and it won't be hitting anything. And then we just cut the bottom half off and weld that all the way, both sides, into the chassis leg. So I'll get my initial cut there. So we can cut that section out, and then we'll fine tune it with the strut on, going up and down, because there's no point cutting all the way up here if the drive shaft is only going to go to here. Obviously we are cutting into the chassis leg and we are adding the strength back in with this really thick tube, but there's no point taking out more than we need to. So I'll start here. I know this is around about where we need to be, and then we can fine tune it from there. My tool of choice today is going to be a 3-inch hole cutter. It's slightly smaller than 3-inch. This is 278. It's a 73mm. But that'll just give me a little bit of wiggle room so I can adjust as we go. So I'm going to try and cut all the way through the chassis leg with that. So far, so good. It's just getting a bit caught up where it's catching on the edges, but that's going to leave a nice neat hole. Carry on, try and get underneath and then all the way through. And voila, that has left us with a perfect little path through to the drive shaft. So now let's try our piping and see how it fits. I'd say absolutely spot on. So let's get trimming. And with a little bit more fettle in, we've got that as a nice round clean hole. I've taken all the stone chip off around the outside so it'll be ready for when we weld it. And now when we put our pipe up, we have got really nice tight fitment all the way round, As you can see, you've got that little semicircle at the top. That's actually a factory grommet that sits in there in the chassis leg. So we'll weld a little semicircle in there. But now we can put that in, try and get the seam of the pipe down the bottom, because we'll be cutting that out, and then the top half will be all one piece. So now what I'm going to do is draw all the way round to the back, and then we can cut off the lower half, and that will fit in place right through to our drive shaft. So let's mark that out and get chopping. And then we've got our rough outline. Once we cut it out, it is quite an irregular shape. So you have to have quite a long bit of pipe, but then it makes the perfect notch. And of that big 3-inch pipe, we only need this little shape. So that will go in the chassis leg. Let's put it in. What I'm going to do is tack it in, and then I'll grind it back so it's flush with the chassis legs. So then we have the exact right shape, and then I can just weld it all the way around. This is nice and thick, the chassis leg's nice and thick, so we can wind the welder up and really glue it in. So it's still a bit crude at the minute, but that will sit in there like so, and we can trim to fit. And sometimes when you're on your own, you just have to improvise a little bit, because you can't hold it and weld it at the same time. So I've just got the bar in there. I've got 2 gearbox stands pushing it up so it's nice and tight at the back. So we've got the perfect fitment around there. That's pushed right up in the hole. So I'm going to give it a weld there. And then I've just grinded that nice and flush with the same shape as the chassis leg. So that's going to look really nice and neat in there. So now I'll get the top welded on both sides, and then we'll just bend out these bottoms to meet to here, each side, and then trim them to fit. And then we've got this side all ground down flat. So that's flush with the chassis leg shape. So now we can get that all welded in as well. And there's the inside all welded up, nicely seamed all the way around. And then on the outside, I've just ground it down flat, flush, so it all looks like a factory piece of bodywork. So then we'll seal that and stone chip it back in. We are all done structurally for now, so that goes straight through. So let's put the strut back in, put it all together and pump it up like we did the other side, just to double check, and then we can seal this side all up. So strut back on, we've got our pump underneath. Let's pump it up and see what height and clearance we have. There, just starting to lift the car. Let's get the tape measure. I don't think these are going very low at all. We're on, I'd say, 26.5, which is near enough what it was running at ride height on the coilovers. They might break in a bit more, but I think if we want to get this thing on the floor, we're going to have to look at some ultra low front coilovers. These standard ones might not do it. But we've got loads of clearance here. I know how high we have to be, but as you can see, we've got loads of clearance to the drive shaft. On the white one, I know because of that grommet hole, this was right up tucked in there. So a little bit disappointing on the TECHNIX fronts. We'll see if we can get it a bit lower, because at the minute, fully aired out, this is only going to be as low as what it was at drive height. But we're nicely in the centre, everything clears, so I'm happy to call that done. What I can do, while we've got both struts on and drive shafts all in, is just put the wheels back on and let it down on the ground into a real life situation and see what height it's sitting then. Wheels on, drop it down. Yeah, that is off the ramp. Front centre to lip was 27. It's now 26 3/4. This is not dropping like it's hot. Well, these are the struts we've got, so these are the ones we're going to use for now. We'll get it all plumbed up, but this is it completely aired out, not the ground scraper we were hoping for. So everything clears, so we'll get the wheels back off, get everything all sealed up and stone chipped, and then we can move on to the rears. So I just thought I'd have another quick check that nothing was getting bound up, but the anti-roll bar is all clear of the body, the wishbone's all clear of the body everywhere, the steering arm isn't bound up, that's still got full articulation. So the limiting factor is just these struts. Maybe if you had bigger wheels that would fit better. Not what we were looking for. And that's the chassis notch on this side all done. Nowhere near as extreme. You don't need to go into the chassis leg this side because the CV joint is basically right there. Even though this side will move a lot all the way up, it'll only move a little bit up this end. So you just got to take the lip off. Some people just leave it like that, but we're just going to weld that seam up and ground it off. And that'll be enough for this side. Like I said, with these struts, I don't think it's even going to touch that, but I want to get it all prepped and ready to if we do go lower. So I'll just buzz up that seam, seal that side, and this side will be done. So that's the seam re-seamed, so we'll just ground that off a bit smoother and seal it up. And all etch primed. You can see the profile a lot better now of what the chassis notch is actually like. So we'll go from this to fully sealed. So that'll all blend in nicely when it all gets dirty. Got a little stippled finish just to match the rest of it. So that is done. And sealed up the other little lip as well. So that's all done. So now I've got the rear wheels off. Let's look at getting rid of all this leaf springs and getting the four-link on. So we want it to look like that. My plan of action is to leave it hanging on the shocks. So I've got a shock there and a shock there, and then unbolt all the leaf springs from underneath, take the U-bolts out, undo it from this end, and then the beam should just hang there, and we can build our assembly all around it. That's the plan. Let's see how it goes. And then they should just pull out. Voila! Like so, and the beam stays in place. What? And another one. So this side was a bit of a pain in the bum, whereas the other side bolts come out the middle. This one would not budge, so I had to end up cutting it off. So I cut each side of there, and then it all slid out. So the other thing that has now come to me is, because this has got a flipped beam, we need to put the spring mount back on the top. You can see where they cut it off, where that rusty line is. That's where this perch needs to go. So it's not too bad. On the other one, we just cut it off there, cut it off the other side, put it on the top, and then that's where it all mounts on there. Went to look at the other side, and it's gone. Looked around on the spring, nothing on there. Looked around, and here it is here. So it has been welded on there like that. You can see the weld, but hasn't actually stuck to it. So I don't know what they used to weld it. You can see on the back there, it was a whole load of splatter, but no penetration. And when the springs come off, that's come off. And that is what holds the wheels on. So that's what stops the wheels moving around. So it wasn't actually stuck when they welded it. So you can see they put a big blob of weld there, a lot of grinding, not the nicest welding in the world, obviously, but it didn't even stick. So that is quite funny, but a little bit worrying. But it has saved me a job, because now I can just put that on the top. So what I'll do, I'll clean all these up, clean all that off. You can see where they cut the old one off there. On this side, you can still see a bit of it there, but the welding on this one doesn't look a lot better, so that might pop off as well. But these will go back on the top. So let's just see if this side is attached. Well, at least they improved on their welding on this side. But the good thing about these, they do have a datum on there, and it is on the top, so it makes it nice and easy to line these up. So I'll flip them over and then get them welded on. But this one has made me laugh with these quick release welds. So there was a lot of splatter, a lot of grinding, but it didn't actually stick. A bit on the worrying side, but maybe the same people that did this were the ones that fabricated the exhaust. So let's clean this up and get it on. So I'm just getting the top all cleaned up, ready for welding, and I noticed this side is in fact cracked all the way along there, so there wasn't much holding this side. Side completely detached, And this side has just got a little bit of splatter on the front holding it on, so that's pretty lucky. Little lever. Oh. Same again, quick release. Makes my job easier. So we'll clean it up and put it there. And there they are in place, cleaned up, and you can locate them just by putting a bolt all the way through, top to bottom, bolting that on, then that'll keep them square with the top. But I'm not going to weld them on just yet because as part of our rear forelink kit, these are the plates that go on the top, and as you can see there's the peg that goes all the way through, and we did have to modify them on the white one because they didn't line up. So what I'm going to do is fit these. So our bracket goes on there, and then it still sits a little bit proud, so it locates itself in there, and that's locked in. So I'm just going to assemble it all first, double check that everything lines up, and if it does, then that will be clamped on and we can weld it up then. So let's start getting some of these bits. Like I said earlier, it's all a bolt together kit. So we've got these bits all braced like that, and they slot in there where we took the leaf spring out. So you can see they've got the perch there, which sits on that one there, that one at the back, which sits on there. So that takes the load and then it's bolted in. Then that gives us our mounts for our forelink bars. So they require a little bit of a tap. I'll clean off all this stone chip because that'll be in the way, and then they'll slide up in there and we can bolt all the way through, and we'll have our front mounts ready. Quite handily, all the bits have laser etched part numbers in. And then all the part bags have the corresponding numbers. So for our top plate, we are 15.5. So we have our bag 15.5, and that's got all our fasteners for there. So let's get this on. So I've got the front arms on, got the lower bellow mounts, and I hadn't welded these on because I was going to see if the bags lined up, because on the other one, if you remember, we were a bolt hole out, and on these we're also a bolt hole out. The bags don't sit flush on the bottom mounts, the mounting hole is offset, so if we put the bags on like that, they'd be splayed out and that'd just rip the bag. But they locate on the beam on that nubbin at the top, so what we'll have to do, like I did on the white one, is grind that off and move both of these plates in slightly, and that'll make sure the bags stay nice and straight with the chassis. So I'll pop that back off again, but it's exactly the same as what happened on the white one. So there's the top arm back off again, and there's our plate that we took off. And as you can see, this sits just a little bit proud, which locates into the beam. So what we've got to do is grind that off flat, and then we can move this up and down on the beam wherever we need it. So I'll grind that flat, and then we'll put it where we want. Like so. So now we can slide it wherever we want. Let's get the other one down smooth. Matchy matchy. Let's get them back on. So now we've got the nubbin smoothed off. That doesn't locate in the hole anymore, which will allow us to slide them in. I put the yellow line on there so we're still orientated correctly. So I'll make our measurement between the 2 points, and then we can just move it in and clamp it on there. So I've just measured side to side, and now we are at 98.5. hole to hole on the bottom, and exactly the same on the top. So now the bags are going to be totally straight. We've lined up with our mark at the top, so now I can tack these in, and then we can unbolt it and weld it all up. And all welded on with Mr. MIG. That definitely isn't going anywhere. And on the top you can see how offset the holes are compared to where they should be. So we'll give that a quick paint up and bolt it back together. And if you look at the top, you can see how far we had to move over, almost half a hole's worth. So we had to do exactly the same on the white one, not sure why, but that fixes it. And there we are, all bolted back on. So we're back on our mounts, the perches in its new position, and our bags are perfectly in line with the bolt holes. So you can see there the threads line up with the hole now, which means the bags will sit nice and straight. So both sides. So I've now been final fitting all the arms, doing all the nuts up, getting everything in its right place. You can see I've got the new shorter shocks on, which are quite a bit shorter than the factory ones, to save them bottoming out. So we'll just get these bottom bolts in, get the bag secured, And then we've just got to drill a hole through where those slots are. We'll push that up into the chassis leg and that will sit up in there. And then a long bolt just goes through the side of the leg there. And then with them on, we can put our cross brace in, our Watts linkage, and the rear half will be all mechanically done. The bags line up so well now, it is literally threading in, no resistance. So we can do that up, get the other side on. That is how they're supposed to be. So I really don't know what the issue is with these beams, why you have to move it in on every single one. I did email TECHNIX, but because they're Germany based, I didn't get any response from them. So yeah, seems a bit of a strange one, but we have solved it. So I've just found an issue which is a little bit annoying. It is a manufacturing fault. What you need to do is drill a hole through there, then this slots up like that. And then you put a long bolt all the way through there. It goes through this slot, and then nut and bolt on the other side. They're slotted, so you can move this forwards and backwards to line up with your hole at the bottom. So as you can see there, if you drill a hole, the slot goes all the way through. You go in one side, out the other side, and then a nut on the back. So that'll sit up in there, lovely jubbly. The other side, I drilled through, but then couldn't get through the other side. So when I took it back out again, we've got our slot here and our slot here, and I couldn't drill all the way through. And what I have discovered is they've welded this plate on upside down. As you can see, you've got your slot here, you've got a little gap between the plate and the slot. This side, you've got a big gap between the plate and the slot, and the little gap is at the top. So this plate should be the other way around, because this bolt goes through there, then it hits there. So as you can see, the slots don't line up. When you're straight on, that is not going to work. They should be nicely aligned, like that slot and that slot, so you can see all the way through it, and the bolt will go all the way through. So I can get this one drilled on. I have got these nicely in line, so I'm probably not going to have to slot it, but I am going to have to drill a hole all the way through so we can get the bolt through. But as you can see there, we've got no chance of getting a bolt all the way through there. Not very helpful. So I've just dropped the other side out. As you can see, we've got the big bit at the top, small bit at the bottom, so the two slots line up. On this one, we've got the big bit at the bottom, so the slots do not line up. So this is a manufacturing problem in the factory. They've welded this one on upside down. Idiots. So I've just had some chopping with the whirly file, and now we have a slot that lines up. We don't need quite so much adjustment because I know this is in the right place in the middle there. So I've just put a little bit of adjustment, but now we can put our bolt through and it will line up with the slot on the other side. So let's blow this off and get it bolted in. So it should have been as easy as just drilling the hole and putting the bolt through. And then you do the captive nut up there, and there it is mounted. So there's the bolt going through its new slot, and then they just have a nut on the back, and that's where they locate. So they don't actually put any strain on that. It's sitting on the plates on the bottom of the chassis leg. That's more of a locator, but now that is on, and got the other side on as well. That one just went straight through, and that meant I could get the cross beam on, because that mounts to those top plates as well. That bolted on. Then I could get the Watts linkage on and get the arms on. I think they've cut a bit of a corner on the Watts linkage now as well, because you have to put these Allen keys through, and then that bolts into the center of the bearing. But on the other one, that had flats machined into that bit, so you could put a spanner up in there and then do the Allen key up. But this one hasn't. It's just completely round. So I had to kind of wedge some long nose pliers up there, and the same on the back. You get to that one through a little hole there. But again, there was no flats on the bearing, so it's just a kind of a do it up and try. So I've got the Watts linkage on, so we'll adjust all that up when it's on the floor. And what that allows is that you can move the beam left or right, get it completely centered, and then as it goes up and down, that will stay centered. If you just have a panhard rod, that will go in an arc. But with all the shocks on, all the mounts on, I think everything now is completely bolted up to where it needs to be. We are fully 4 linked up. So as always, nothing is straightforward, but with a bit of modification, we are now all in and mounted. So it does look cool under there with all the new linkage, and we are all mounted. Front's all back on. There's a little chassis notch this side, all sealed up and stone chipped. And this side with a big chassis notch, all sealed up nicely and stone chipped. Everything is back on. So let's have a look at how we're going to control this. So good news in the back, we weren't sure what was under all this boxing, but I've got the top one off, undone the screws, slid it out, and we have got a nice lot of space in here. So I could put the manifold in here, screw it in, have all the pipes and everything running through. We can pop our rear bags up, they can come out the rear, up and into here, and we can run them along. So all the messy lines can be P-clipped along the wood and kept really nice and hidden. If our manifold's in there, so all our pipes that come off and around will all be not looking like a spaghetti on the outside, and then we can just have a nice clean tank install in the middle. So with all the faff and the modifications we had to do on the 4-link setup, I think I'm going to wrap this video up here. We can carry on with all the install of the tank, the compressor, all the electronics and the manifold in the next episode. Now I've seen we can get in here nicely, I think we can make this really nice and neat. So it is a bit of a pain that we have to make these modifications, and as we know, nothing is ever bolt on, but on this one I had to do even more modifications than I did on the last one. So they're not improving things, in fact it seems like they're getting worse. But the TECHNIX 4-link kit is the only one I seem to be able to get for these, so it's still a lot easier than starting from scratch. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Make sure you give it a like. Be sure to tune in next time where we'll have the Airlift Performance Kit all installed up and running, and we can get this Caddy down on the floor. But until then, make sure you have fun.